Salvia officinalis, also known as common sage. This is what sage seeds look like. I sow sage seeds directly into my planter pot. Please keep soil moist until seeds germinate. Before sowing my sage seeds, I make sure the soil I am using is in the moist condition. Using dry soil will repelling water rather than absorbing it. Sage seeds need light to germinate, so don't cover them. Sage seeds start to germinate. For me, sage seed usually germinate between day 6 to day 12. From what I am reading, it can take up to 21 days. This is what sage cotyledon leaf look like. For me, optimal seeds germination temperatures for sage are 21 degrees Celsius, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Sage true leaf start to emerge. You could start sage indoors and transplant later. In cooler climate, usually you can start to propagate sage at 8 to 12 weeks before last frost date. Last frost date refers to the average final spring frost in your growing location. This last frost date and temperature varies greatly depending on your state, county, elevation, and even whether you live in an urban or rural environment. For starting seed indoor, as soon as seedlings emerge, please provide light to seedlings. You can put them on a sunny windowsill or grow seedlings beneath LED grow lights. Distance grow light from plant depend on LED wattage of your lights, the amount of ambient light, and the type of plant you are growing. A general rule is that LED lights should be about 12 to 30 inches from the top of your plant. As your plants grow, you have to change the height of your lights to accommodate the growing plant's height. For growing seedling using grow lights, please do not leave lights on for 24 hours. Please give the seedling 8 to 10 hours of dark period. Using incandescent bulbs will not work for this process because they will get too hot. If you growing sage indoors in cooler climate, you may notice that your plants become leggy and pale. This is due lack of light. Other sign of lack of light is that your plant may drop their leaves, especially older leaves. If your plant exposed to too much light, it may result in scorched and bleached leaves. Before planting in the garden, sage seedling need to be hardened off. This hardening off process toughens the plant's cell structure and reduces transplant shock and scalding. If you don't harden your plants, the young plants will get burned by the sun, the shock of cold, or the wind. If frost threatens at night, cover or bring containers indoors, then take them out again in the morning. You also need to protect young sage plants from wind and hot sun. For most plants, begin hardening off a week before the final frost date for your area. After your plant have been hardening off, you can transplant them to new container or sowing directly in the garden. For planted sage to new container, choose your desirable pot that is 1 to 2 inches larger than the current size, if the plant is currently in a 10 inches pot or smaller. If your current pot size is greater than 10 inches, choose a pot that is 2 to 3 inches larger in diameter. For me, best time to transplant sage to new container are in early morning or late afternoon. If growing sage in the garden bed, space sage plants 18 to 24 inches, 45 to 60 centimeters apart. Temperature range for growing sage 16 to 27 degrees Celsius, 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Optimal temperature range for growing sage 16 to 22 degrees Celsius, 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. For optimal sage growing humidity are between 45 to 55% relative humidity, moderate humidity level. If you live in an area with a lot of humidity, make sure your plants have enough air circulation around them to prevent fungal growth. Sage lifespan in my climate is perennial. My minimum temperature when growing sage is 22 degrees Celsius. My maximum temperature when growing sage is 32 degrees Celsius. My average humidity when growing sage are about 80%. I grow my sage in tropical climate. Sage prefer to grow in Mediterranean climate. Sage hardy in zones 4 to 10 USDA. When you propagate sage by seeds, it is common to have some seeds fail to germinate. Sage success germination rate depend on seeds quality, seed age, moisture, and temperature. For me, on average, sage seed viability are about 1 year. Sage seed viability is greatly affected by its quality at the time of collection, its treatment between collection, storage, and the conditions in which it is stored. Sage also can be propagated by stem cutting, division, and ground layering. Propagate using water. Rooting sage will generally occur in 1 to 2 weeks, but some plants will take longer. When the roots are 1 to 2 inches long or longer, the cutting is ready to be potted up. It seems Japanese beetles eating my sage leaf. Soil I use for growing sage contain cocoa peat, red burn soil, micro, fine sand, old humus, and charcoal. You can use whatever growing media available to your convenience. As long as you use well-drained soil to grow sage, you will be fine. Also, if you can, please make sure that your growing media are sterilized and clean. By choosing sterilized and clean growing media will minimize new seedlings from becoming infected from disease-causing pathogens. Using heavy soil when growing sage will promote root rot. Sage like to grow in sandy or loamy soil with good drainage. Sage prefers slightly acidic to neutral soil pH between 6 and 7 pH. My soil pH when I try to grow sage are about 7 pH. Soil pH is a measure of the acidity or alkalinity in soils. In the pH scale, pH 7.0 is neutral. Below 7.0 pH is acidic and above 7.0 pH is basic or alkaline. Soil pH affects nutrients availability for plant growth. In highly acidic soil, aluminum and manganese can become more available and more toxic to plant while calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium are less available to the plant. For example, soil less than 4.6 pH are too acid for most plants. In highly alkaline soil, phosphorus and most micronutrients become less available. Without an adequate supply of phosphorus, plant growth is diminished, maturity delayed, and yield reduced. At 7.5 pH, iron availability becomes a problem on alkaline soil. In plants' nutrition, iron is required for photosynthesis and chlorophyll synthesis. 8.3 pH and above are too alkaline for most plants to grow. Most plants grow in 6 pH, 7.5 pH range. It is helpful to check the soil pH before planting, as different plants thrive in different soil pH ranges. You can measure your soil pH by using pH meters. Container size I use for growing sage. Height 10 centimeters. Width 12 centimeters. You also can grow sage in bigger container than mine. The bigger the container, the bigger root system will develop and will resulting bigger plant. Sage can grow up to 60 centimeters to 75 centimeters tall. Sage can grow up to 60 centimeters to 75 centimeters wide. Please make sure your container have good drainage when growing sage. Waterlogged container will promote root rot. For me, the advantage for growing in container is gives me more control over sunlight, moisture, and temperature. For this growing season, on average my water usage are about 200 milliliters. and I only water my plant when the topsoil dry up. Time I water my plant is between 7 to 8 in the morning. Water usage depends on container size, container type, weather, and climate you live in. Your water usage may be different than me. Sage water preference are moderate watering. Since sage water preference are moderate watering, allow soil to dry before watering. For me, it's easier to overwatering than underwatering. Overwatering will promote root rot. Always water sage at the root zone. Please do not water from overhead. Overhead watering can cause them to mildew. Also, if you can, please avoid watering in the evening. Since at night, water tends to rest in the soil around the roots, which encourages fungal growth and insects infestation. This is why morning watering is preferable to evening watering, as the plant has time to dry before the sun goes down. When established, sage are a relatively drought-tolerant plant. Sage are light feeders and won't need much fertilization. If you see your plant is struggling and want to use fertilizer, please do not overfeed the plant. Please read the instructions carefully before starting using any fertilizers. You can use whatever fertilizer available to your convenience. Some sign of overfertilization: defoliation, very slow or no growth, yellowing and wilting of lower leaf and browning leaf tips. Adding too much fertilizer also can resulting in weaker sage flavor. Sage is native to the Mediterranean region, though it has been naturalized in many places throughout the world. Sage has a long history of medicinal and culinary use. In culinary, sage used to flavor stuffings, sausages, and cheese. In optimal condition, it takes around 65 to 75 days from planting seeds to get harvestable sage leaves. For the best sage flavor, harvest before the plant flowers for the season. You can pick off individual sage leaves by hand as needed, or trim off sprigs of the stem. Aim to use the sage leaves right away when fresh, or dry them for later use. Common sage binomial name is Salvia officinalis L. Sage is in mint family Lamiaceae, labiata. The genus Salvia originates from the Old Latin name of sage, salvio, meaning healer, referring to the various medicinal properties of sage. Thank you for watching.